Situation in New York, a congressman who is really almost the favorite to defeat Nancy Pelosi in the Democratic caucus. If the Democrats won control of the House, he's knocked out by Bernie Sanders socialists. So they have their own problems with the extreme left, clearly winning a few primaries around the country. And that was a key one and a big surprise.
But Palkin says it is these far-left radicals who are fired up.
What I worry about is the intensity of the left and the kind of money they've got behind them, and that you've got all these leftist organizations that have tons of money. This is really a pitched battle, and the conservatives had better wake up and realize these people don't care about meeting in the middle. They just care about running over the other side.
I'm Chad Groening.
The Chicago City Council will approve a $2.5 million settlement for a family that attorneys say was terrorized by Chicago police 4 years ago. The family alleges their case is not isolated, and there is a pattern of such behavior around children. The family's attorney, Al Hofeld Jr., says the young child in this case still suffers from nightmares following that incident.
She saw the gun pointed at her, point blank. She saw the gun pointed at her grandmother's head. She saw her mother, who was already handcuffed, assaulted by the police. And then, as if all of that wasn't bad enough, she sees and hears an officer trampling her toys, breaking her toys. She sees furniture and toys flying out of her bedroom.
The precedent-setting lawsuit alleges that police violated the civil rights of the family. And Kroger is about to test whether it can steer supermarket customers away from crowded grocery stores with a fleet of small, driverless cars designed to lower delivery costs. The test program announced today would make Kroger the first U.S. grocer to make deliveries with robotic cars that won't have a human riding along to take control in case something goes wrong. American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Abraham Hamilton III.
God put us in this world at this time to be salt and light. We don't fold because of the darkness that we're facing. This is not the first time in the world's history that it's gotten dark. God has called you and I to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment.
Tune in to the Hamilton Corner, weekdays at 5 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk. Welcome to Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington.
Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell. Congressman, we've now heard almost word for word the same analysis from former Republican Steve Schmidt, from former Democratic Congresswoman Donna Edwards, from our own Rachel Maddow, that it is time for you guys to get mean and fight. Are you ready?
Yes, Nicole, and we've seen this week that we cannot count on the court to save us from the wrecking ball that is Donald Trump. And as far as what I can do as a congressman, electing a Democratic majority that can push that big red button to stop the wrecking ball, that's what we have to do. But what the Senate should do, I believe Mitch McConnell should believe in his own rules that he set under Merrick Garland. And as long as he is the leader of the Senate, I don't think they should work under any other rules.
Wow. Welcome to Stacy on the Right here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. You're listening to what will be a continuing theme for the show today. The Democrats are losing their minds. They're tweeting expletives at Justice Kennedy and his family. They're wishing that he would just die or get assassinated. They're upset with him for deciding to retire while Donald Trump is still in office and has not yet been given the opportunity to be impeached by them, because they realize the handwriting is on the wall. The 5-4 decisions will keep on coming, but that's not their problem. They're looking at the possibility of a 6-3 court, a conservative court that would deliver unto the nation, America, not just right-leaning decisions, but possibly the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And dare we say, Obergefell? It's just beyond comprehension for them. So there'll be a lot of, if you have any popcorn, you might want to get it handy, because there's going to be a lot of meltdown moments here on the show today as we listen to the reactions, specifically from Chris Matthews, but from others who simply cannot get their minds wrapped around everything that has come from them nominating Hillary Clinton and her loss. So welcome to the show. We have one guest for you in hour 2. It's going to be Pastor John Hagee. He's going to come on and talk to us today. This hour, we are going to get into just what all of this means. We have 17 states suing the Trump administration. We have some poll numbers here about the violence and civil war possibilities. Americans are actually turning this over in their minds due to the rhetoric of the Democrats. We'll talk about the top 4 picks that President Trump is going to interview for the Supreme Court, and what drives success in this country. Is it a secret? Is it something that people have yet to figure out? Or have certain Americans got a good grip on what it takes to be successful and are not only operating within that for themselves, but passing it down to their children and making it a standard for themselves? I am fascinated by this report, and I think it's wonderful news for those of us who believe that there is a cause and effect, that there's black and white, that there are certain truths that are evident no matter what kind of tan you're sporting, or how tall you are, or how thin you are, or even how much education you have. There are certain things that are true in this country, and so we're going to talk about that as well. So you were listening to MSNBC's Nicole Wallace asking Mr. Swalwell if he's ready to get mean and fight. And my question for her is, what have they been doing? Have the Democrats not been mean enough? Have they not fought enough? It seems as if, to me, they've been mean. They've been fighting. They've definitely brought it on in and done so much. I think it's interesting. It's going to be one of those situations where we have to kind of figure out what we're going to do. And when I say what we're going to do, it has to be that the Republicans decide early on as a conference that they're going to put aside their differences in order to get another justice seated. Now, we have a little bit of audio for you from Senator Mitch McConnell, where he talks about how the Senate is going to confirm a nominee. And so he's putting it to rest, this idea that he's somehow set a precedent that in an election year you cannot nominate and confirm a Supreme Court justice. And I have to say, remember, we were talking about a presidential election that was hotly contested, and that's in the past. And so we don't want to get stuck in what some people have been calling whataboutism, which we're all guilty of. We all say, well, if you're angry at that, what about this? Why weren't you angry at that? But if we're going to really have a solid discussion about this, we can't be living in 2016. 2016's gone. 2017 is gone. It's 2018 now. And we have some very serious things to consider. And one of the most interesting things that we're going to get to kind of go over is whether or not the current top 4 picks, so there have been 4 who've been kind of pulled aside and elevated to cream of the crop status out of the list of 25, that it's a list from the Federalist Society and the Heritage Foundation. Those 2 organizations are conservative organizations that vet Supreme Court nominees and candidates for sitting presidents. And they've actually, someone from the Federalist Society has actually taken a leave of absence so that he can join the Trump, not really the cabinet, but the team in advising on these different nominees so that they can figure out which one of the 4 is going to move forward. And these are very interesting people. So you've got this news out of CBS today, and the top 4 candidates that President Trump intends to interview for the high court are Amy Coney Barrett, Raymond Kethledge, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amul Thapar. So this is Jan Crawford of CBS, and she says 3 sources confirm 3 primary front runners, and she says that President Trump intends to interview 3 to 5, so there could be another on the list that we haven't heard about, and they're speculating that it might be Don Willett, Justice Willett out of Texas. And that could be interesting. It really could. But the question is, what will people do if it's a woman? Now, we know there's no reason to expect consistency from the left side of the aisle. They're constantly talking about the war on women and how horrible it is to treat women badly, yet they're the ones who are leading these mobs attacking Kirsten Nielsen and others. They're the ones who are now saying it's racism to say that Maxine Waters is wrong for calling for mobs to accost Trump supporters and administration officials out in public. That's not even close to being the case. It's not racism to say someone is wrong about something that they're doing. It's not racism to say, hey, you know, I think your behavior is incorrect. So one of the things that I want to just put out there, and this is for anyone to think through and consider, is if we couldn't see the person and we heard them say that you should accost people at the gas station, you should gather together mobs and run people out of restaurants, don't let anybody have any space or time or freedom in the public if they're a part of the Trump administration, would it matter to you if the person who said it was Black or Asian or Hispanic or you know, or would you just say, no, that sounds wrong? That sounds like something that we've never done before here in this country, and we're not going to start doing it now. I dare say that's un-American. That idea sounds like something out of a third world country where they don't even have good elections every 2 years and they're currently led by a dictator. That's not racism. So I think obviously the way that the race card is tossed around has precipitated the use of the term the race card. But the way that people talk about what someone has said, if they're white or if they're Black, I see it all the time in conservative papers and liberal papers. Black conservative says blah, and it's a viral video. Instead of saying, you know, the person's name, they delineate them, boil them down to their correct characteristics. I think that's wrong. I think what we have to do if we really want to stop everything being about race is every time we see someone making it about race, we have to say, it's not about race. Stop doing that. Address what she said. Do you agree that people shouldn't be allowed to go pump gas or go to church or go to any place in the public if they support Donald Trump? If you believe that, then let's talk about how un-American you are, not how racist it is to say that's un-American. And I understand there's an othering type of a thing. There's a, you know, oh, well, that person isn't American. And the insinuation is the only way you can be American is if you're white. But that doesn't hunt either. Well, look, did we not just have the first Black president? Whatever criticism some nincompoops leveled at him because they don't know how to analyze and correctly assess why they don't like someone or why they don't like someone's positions doesn't mean that that's a problem that everyone has. We all have a tendency to want to protect our own, be among our own, if you will, whether it's people who share the same political ideology, the same faith, the same socioeconomic status, which is the most often the indicator of how people will clump together, or the same football teams, the same hockey teams, whatever. All humans have a tendency towards that. It's anthropologically, it's science that women like to group together with women who look like themselves. So that's why you see pictures of friends together and you look around the table and almost everybody looks alike because they want to be friends with women who look just like themselves. It's weird. People don't even know they're doing it. It doesn't mean they're racist. It means that there are natural grouping patterns that people engage in and they're doing it for whatever reason they're doing it for. And so I think we get sucked into the left's war on that. And so much so that there's even been, I've seen some discussions surrounding this idea that now that we have these first gay justices, we have the first Hispanic Supreme Court justice who's a woman. We have, you know, the first Black justice who's a man. Obviously, we've had white justices. We've had Jewish justices. Now we need a first Black female justice. I'd love to see that. I would. But should our consideration be that we need to find someone who's a Black woman, who's a conservative and a jurist? Or should it be that we need to find the person who is most likely to deliver consistent opinions that do not interpret the Constitution? And this is a problem that we have because a lot of people have been very kind of unhappy with Justice Roberts for his Obamacare decision, him moving over and crossing over and making Obamacare the law of the land, which thank God there was a judicial remedy for that, or a legislative remedy for that, which was so far they've been able to undo it by taking it apart piece by piece. And it can still be undone. Obamacare is not something that can't be undone. Is the political will there among the legislators to actually get it done. But there's something else that people aren't really they're not really doing what I feel like is good, solid analysis on it. And the reason I say that is because when we're thinking about who we want to be on the Supreme Court, there are some different considerations that are to be taken. And so, first of all, you have to kind of go into the language. And this is a kind of conversation that, lawyers are better at having, people like that, but we can still understand it. As lay people, we can still get the gist of what's going on here. So I want to share this with you. And this is food for thought, because obviously none of us are going to be voting or having a say in who eventually ends up on the Supreme Court, except that we can reach out to our individual senators from our state. Each state has 2. You can call their offices and you can say, I definitely prefer, and you can leave your name and your address so they know what district you're in and that you're their constituent, and you can weigh in like that. But as far as, getting that list of 25 that I read a few names off of yesterday down to the list of these 4 people, well, yeah, we didn't get to really pick that, but that's okay. We can still understand what's going on here. So according to some lawyers that I know, there are 4 kind of terms, ways that you can assess what kind of jurist a person would be on the Supreme Court. So the first type of jurist believes in originalism. And originalism is defined as, what did the proponents originally intend this to mean? So every time they have a case come before the court, an originalist would say, okay, this case falls within this area of the Constitution, and the Constitution says this. What did the founders intend this to mean? You've got textualists, which the majority of these individuals who are on this short list of 4 are considered to be textualists. Textualists think of cases in this way. Who cares what they meant? What does it say? Who cares what someone might think you meant when you were founding this country and creating the Constitution? What does the Constitution say? Okay? And then stare decisis. What have past courts said this means, or other things that are analogous to it? Oh, that sounds really, really kinky. I don't like that. And then judicial restraint. The worst thing you can be called is a judicial activist who strikes down every law you don't like. Don't be like that. If you can find a way to save a duly enacted statute as constitutional, do. Another one that sounds like something I don't like. So that's the considerations that the Federalist Society and the Heritage Foundation have taken when they're considering who goes on the list of 25, and then from the 25, who makes the top 5 who will be interviewed. So I found that to be pretty fascinating. I'm happy to share it with you. All right, we'll be back with more right after this.
to Stacey on the Right.
Tom Goldstein, are you aware of a mechanism or a procedure that Democrats could invoke to short of 50 votes?
No, and it's not even going to be that close, unfortunately, for Democrats. The real issue is this. Democrats are going to have to vote because there's no procedural way to stop it before the midterm election. And there are just too many people who are running in elections, senators in states that Donald Trump won. There's going to be enormous pressure on them since they can't beat the nominee to vote for the nominee. So I'll take Chris's bet at 10-1. I think that whoever it is going to get confirmed by about 56 to 44. And Democratic leadership, Chris is absolutely right, is going to try and lay down on the tracks. The problem is the train's just going to run over them. There isn't anything that they can do.
We'll see.
Okay, we'll take a closer look a little bit later in the show.
What you just said, sir, it's not acceptable politically to the Democratic base. It's not acceptable to accept this as a fait accompli.
So Chris is saying this is the hill on which to die. Let's just get crazy. Let's just do this thing. There's no reason for us to pretend anymore. Now we got to get mean. So he's really upset. So you've got this time. It's Tom Goldstein, who's the SCOTUS blog founder. He's saying the odds are in the GOP's favor. And you can hear Chris Matthews losing his mind. Now, we have some more audio of Chris Matthews because he was on all morning, just apoplectic, losing every single discussion. I can't believe you said that out. How dare you say that? Yada, yada, yada. And he went on and on and on and on like that. And it was interesting because he just seemed to lack the ability to just have someone disagree with him on television today. He just wasn't able to do it. He's just like, I'm done. I'm done having people disagree with me. Everyone who's a Democrat had better understand that they had better block this. But the reality is what Tom Goldstein just shared, which is that if you're a Democrat in a swing district, or if you're a Democrat in a state that went for Donald Trump, especially by double digits, then you have to be aware that your voters, your constituents, wanted Donald Trump to be there, which means they probably wanted him to make these Supreme Court picks. And, as an aside, if you are a never Trumper, or maybe that's a little too strong, you just simply dislike President Trump, you're, mildly annoyed that he's president, but whatever. If there's ever been a time where you can kind of just stop a second and thank God, because we don't know everything. I don't know why America was permitted to have Barack Obama as the president. I honestly don't. I mean, yes, I feel like it was a judgment upon us, but it feels like it was so rough. It was really something to have to endure. And so now here we are, we have Donald Trump, and I'm sure people on the left who are Christians really feel like he's something that they're enduring, and it's just so horrible. And I understand that. But you have to kind of look at it if you're interested in the pro-life movement, if you're interested in the Constitution, if you're interested in slowing the left's continual movement of this entire country into progressivism, which leads to socialism, which leads to communism, then you have to be really grateful right now, as Justice Kennedy retires, that it's Donald Trump who'll pick the nominee to replace him, who'll pick the Supreme Court justice to take that seat, rather than a Hillary Clinton, who would have chosen someone who not only would have made re-legalized partial birth abortion, would have eliminated a lot of the strictures that we have and sovereignty that we have surrounding our immigration controls. There's just so much. The Second Amendment would have been severely negatively impacted by her. This is a moment in which we can simply stop for a second and raise our hands and say, thank you, God. Hallelujah. Thank you that we didn't have Hillary Clinton making these two picks. Neil Gorsuch has been a solidly conservative jurist, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's been such a comfort to know where this list comes from, because most conservatives, and especially establishment people who were writing about the Supreme Court at the time when President Trump became the nominee back during the campaign, they did not think he had the ability to nominate conservative judges, because they felt, this guy's not a conservative. He doesn't even know the Republican Party platform. He knows nothing about jurisprudence. He joked around about nominating his own sister to the court, who is a liberal. And so, you kind of look at that and you're like, this worked out a lot better than they planned. thank God he's in control and not, the people who were making all of these terrible prognostications. And so, we've got a few things in our back pocket that we know. We know that Justice Kennedy was the most powerful judge in American history. On almost every case of any consequence, cases that are quoted, cases that drive people like me up the wall, Obergefell, Roe, he was the one who made the deciding vote and wrote the opinions. He was already the 10th most conservative justice in the past 80 years, according to organizations that watch and track their votes. But his replacement is going to be much more conservative and will shift the court dramatically to the right. This is as big a conservative revolution for our country as the Reagan Revolution was. This is going to last. The impacts of this are going to last for decades. Word on the street is, and I've been reading everything I can get my little, email cursor on, is that we're looking at these people being in their late 40s, early 50s, which leaves a good 20, 30 years for them to govern from SCOTUS. Not govern, but to rule from SCOTUS. Issues like affirmative action, school prayer, gun rights, and abortion will possibly see enormous changes. That includes affirmative action. And I've had a few people reach out like, how do you feel about affirmative action? And I've been pretty clear in radio interviews all over the country that I don't support it, not because I don't think that we needed some kind of leveling of the playing field, but because, like many things that are programs that come out of the government, affirmative action has been completely and utterly misused. It's now simply a tool for making sure that there are women in every location. Women-owned businesses get contracts. It doesn't really help minorities the way it was intended to do. The other problem is that because affirmative action exists, if you are well qualified or overqualified, if you do a fantastic job in high school and come out with a really good GPA out of a good school, if you test well and you get into college, most of the people who are there assume you're there because you're black. They don't assume that you had good test scores or that you're prepared or that you can do the work. In fact, they expect you to fail out. They expect you not to make it past your second year. And affirmative action is the reason why people have these low expectations. The other reason people have low expectations is because of affirmative action. Students of color have gotten into higher educational facilities that their high school didn't prepare them for, and they've struggled, and they have washed out, which is unfair. There are different tiers of colleges and universities, and if we did a better job of matching students to colleges and universities that they can actually handle, more students would matriculate all the way through and would graduate from college. And that is a better result than a blanket mandate from the government that says, if you're black, you're going to get into college over this other student. Now, that being said, I know a lot of people who would disagree with me vehemently on that, who've graduated from college with degrees in pharmacology and law, et cetera, and they feel the only way they would have gotten that slot is because of affirmative action. We have a form of affirmative action, and every person gets to access it, and that is Jesus Christ. You know who breaks down barriers, who sets the captives free? Do you know who gives you the opportunity that your upbringing didn't put you to rub elbows at that boarding school or at that country club? Do you know who bursts open doors of opportunity, breaks through glass ceilings? It's our Father in heaven. When he says that's your job, that's your job. You're going to do the work. You're going to get yourself there through your hard work, effort, and determination and prayer. But if it's something that God has for you, the affirmative action can't put someone else in your place. And a lack of affirmative action can't stop you from getting there. And so I feel like affirmative action, and I think there's demonstrable supporting evidence to bolster what I believe here. Affirmative action harms minorities, specifically black people, because it sets up a situation where we're never seen as being deserving of being where we are. And any place that has affirmative action, the blacks who operate in that environment are automatically assumed to be subpar and unable to get the job on their own. And that's just wrong, especially when I just don't know any incompetent black people. All of the professionals that I know who are black are outstanding individuals, and they're great at their jobs. And they belong in the organizations where they are, working right alongside with the other outstanding individuals who are good at their jobs and have great backgrounds, who just happen not to be black. So that's where I am on affirmative action. And I know somebody's listening to this and they're like, oh, I can't believe you're black and you're saying that. You must hate yourself. Check my Instagram feed. I definitely don't hate myself. And I don't hate anybody else either. Hate brings wrinkles, ulcers, and it's not good for your digestion. So I don't have time to hate. But I will say that it's a really weak argument to say that what I just explained to you, it comes from a place of hate rather than to acknowledge that it's just my opinion and I've read it enough and thought about it enough for me to have that opinion, and I have every right to my opinion. That's a better way of looking at it if you don't agree. So the other thing that this opportunity opens up for President Trump is that once he appoints this justice, no matter what happens after this, if the liberals get their wish and Donald Trump's impeached because he's actually a secret undercover Russian agent, or if he goes through the rest of his presidency and he's completely blocked by the Democrats because they take back the House and the Senate and they're just completely obstruct him from implementing any more of his agenda, it really won't matter because the history books will show that Donald Trump has the most conservative judicial legacy of any Republican in history thus far in the history of our country. The appointment of 2 strict textualists to the Supreme Court of the United States would do that for him. There's also something that people really, it's like, you know, if you think there's a boogeyman around the corner, you definitely don't want to consider that there's a boogeyman and the boogeyman has 2 friends. You don't want to think about that. But the truth is, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I don't know anyone who watches the Supreme Court who thinks she's going to make it all the way through Donald Trump's first term. There's a distinct possibility. It is very real that no matter how hard she tries, she will not be able to see through Donald Trump's term, and he may be able to appoint a 3rd justice. That would be unprecedented. It would be outstanding, and it would be a wonderful counterbalance to what Obama did in appointing 2 very radical judges to the Supreme Court. Now, the other unintended benefit of this, and I'm just like, praise God every 5 seconds. Thank you, Lord. Thank you so much. That this does is this gives Republicans a beautiful rallying cry for the November elections because the Senate is so slim. The Republican majority in the Senate is so slim, 51-49. But it's really 50-49 because Senator John McCain is still holding on to his seat. Now, this might be one of those things where I know with Mitch McConnell, I was like, how could this not backfire on us, him not allowing even hearings on Merrick Garland? But it turned out to be a brilliant move on Mitch McConnell's part. And I have to say, you know, I joined in with everybody else who said he was like Lord Vader. You know, he has all these nicknames about how tough he is. And I just have to say, it was brilliant. And it has really changed my opinion of Mitch McConnell. I honestly, if one decision could change my mind about someone who's a legislator that I feel has possibly been too moderate or not been really adhering to what the electorate wants, that was it for me. It was a brilliant move on his part. And the reverberations from it, we're still feeling the impact right now. Actually, we're feeling it right now. All of those announcements that have come out at the end of this SCOTUS season, those 5-4 decisions, they all go directly to the feet of Mitch McConnell when it comes to the legislative move that he made and not holding hearings for Merrick Garland because it was an election year. And it wasn't unprecedented. Others have done the same thing as the head of the Senate in election years for past presidents under Democrats and under Republicans. So it wasn't unprecedented at all. Now, the rallying cry that I'm talking about when we look at what people are going to be feeling and thinking going into November is before Justice Kennedy announced his retirement, the Republicans had to motivate people on losing the Senate because, you know, this is important. That's important. The Democrats have already come onto television. Elected officials who are Democrats have already come on television multiple times in the last 24 hours and said that they anticipate the entire process to take at least 140 days, which means they expect to lead it right up until November 8th because they're thinking they might be able to run on it too. I think that's a huge mistake. If the Democrats want to have any messaging going into November, if they want to revive their immigration, they've made this wonderful issue for themselves out of immigration, even though it's not really a new issue and it's a non-issue. They've made it something that people have been thinking about and talking about. then they have to get the confirmation process for whoever Trump nominates over and done with so they can get back to their own messaging platform, what they've set up for themselves. If they drag it out, they make it clear that Republicans cannot stay home. You can't, be at home drinking tea or watching American Idol reruns on Election Day in November if you're a Republican. You have to turn out to meet the intensity of the Democrats. Their hatred drives them. You have to be driven by your desire to see the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And if you are a Christian and you're pulling that lever, if the pro-life issue motivates you, then you have to see this as the first opportunity for your prayers to be answered in your adult lifetime. And if you're a young millennial voter, someone who's grown up with the ultrasound photograph on the kitchen counter or your refrigerator stuck to the fridge with a magnet, then you know what's at stake here. You understand that this is the reason why people march by the hundreds of thousands in Washington, D.C. every January. It's the reason we march around the Planned Parenthood in St. Louis and we do the Jericho walk. It's the reason we stand on the sidewalk and we pray. It's the reason we offer our homes and our money and our time and our resources to the women outside the Planned Parenthood. It's the reason we pray. It's the reason we track the number of abortions. It's the reason we offer the counseling. It is the reason. This is it. Start praying, everybody. Just, why are they so freaked out? Because they know it too. So, great news for us. Great news. I couldn't be more pleased to see someone say they were retiring in this moment. So, we'll be back with more after this. Stay there.
This is Uncommon Moments. Here's former Super Bowl winning NFL coach Tony Dungy and his wife Lauren sharing from their book Uncommon Marriage.
Tony and I look forward to Tuesdays because it's a time we can give back to our community.
And it's also become a date day for us. We see our older kids off to school and get a babysitter to watch the youngest ones. Then Lauren and I visit 2 Tampa schools where we read to students. Afterwards, we have lunch together.
Tuesdays is just another way that Tony and I make sure we're scheduling time for the two of us. Yes, we're both busy, but isn't everyone? So when it comes to your uncommon marriage, TIME is the key word. Spend time with each other, and you'll see your marriage grow.
Tony and Lauren Dungy, authors of Uncommon Marriage, learning about lasting love and overcoming life's obstacles together. Discover more at CoachDungy.com.
Hi, I'm Jerry. I always had to have the expensive clothes and sell the right drugs. But drugs and alcohol eventually broke me. So I came to Teen Challenge. And now I've been drug-free for 10 months.
If you know an adult or teenager who's struggling with a chemical addiction, Teen Challenge can help. Call us today at 417-581-2181 or reach us online at teenchallengeusa.com. This is Urban Family Talk.
Listen to Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp.
I mean, did you hear that?
Pointed.
Remember that you're not only a Christian on Sunday.
And insightful.
Deception and lies have been accepted as the norm from the Democrats.
But most of all, she's on the right.
That scripture from the Bible, it says the heart of the fool inclines to the left, just kept popping into my mind.
Stacy on the Right. Now heard weekday afternoons from 2 to 4 Central on Urban Family Talk.
This is Just a Minute with Stacy Washington. Did you know that the Centers for Disease Control did a study on defensive gun use by Americans? Probably not, because the report destroys gun control talking points. A Florida State University criminologist didn't know either and did his own analysis, which showed that Americans use guns to successfully defend themselves against attackers over 2.2 million times a year. This number is based upon an unweighted nationally representative sample of over 12,000 individuals. Data from the CDC confirms this result. In fact, CDC data proves Americans used firearms to defend themselves 3.6 times more often than perpetrators utilize firearms to attack them. This information was kept private by the CDC because it doesn't support the gun grabbers' mantra that all guns are bad. Instead of hiding data, let's spread the truth far and wide. Lawful gun owners use weapons to defend themselves and others millions of times every year. Sounds like gun control to me. I'm Stacey Washington. Find out more at StaceyOnTheRight.com.
This is Stacey on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
Mr. President, just a few minutes ago, Justice Anthony Kennedy announced that he is retiring as an Associate Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court and taking senior status effective July 31st. First and foremost, I want to pause and express our gratitude for the extraordinary service that Justice Kennedy has offered our nation. He served on the federal bench for 43 years. In particular, we owe him a debt of thanks for his ardent defense of the First Amendment and the First Amendment's right to political speech. As Justice Kennedy concludes his tenure on the court, we wish him, his wife Mary, and their family every happiness in the years ahead. The Senate stands ready to fulfill its constitutional role by offering advice and consent on President Trump's nominee to fill this vacancy. We will vote to confirm Justice Kennedy's successor this fall. As in the case of Justice Gorsuch, senators will have the opportunity to meet with President Trump's nominee, examine his or her qualifications, and debate the nomination.
And that was Senator Mitch McConnell. He is the leader of the House, or I'm sorry, the Senate, and he's laying out the ground rules. And I believe part of the reason he made that announcement is because he wanted to set to rest any of these allegations that there might be some reason why they wouldn't do this, why they would wait, why, and there are calls for him to do that. You did it with Merrick Garland, you have to do it now. Yeah, no, he doesn't, and he's just told you guys he's not going to do it. And so I want to also just go over here just a little smidgen more. There's a possibility that this fight will lead to Republicans keeping the Senate, because red state Democrats are going to have to tell their constituents why they're holding up the process. And if they hold up the process, which they feel like, that's what you heard Chris Matthews doing, is making this clarion call. You have to, this is the hill you die on. You stop this. You put a stop to this. I don't care what you have to do, whether you think you can stop it or not. This isn't about what you think. It's about the action that you take. And if Democrats pick up that rallying cry, they're going to feel the pain at the ballot box in November. And so that's a little more of the interesting things that we have to kind of consider that are the pluses to that are addition. These are additional pluses besides the original news that Justice Kennedy is retiring. So now we have Jeffrey Toobin freaking out because Roe v. Wade is doomed. I couldn't have enjoyed this audio more. It's number 6.
I think sometimes we talk about Supreme Court too much in abstractions about dignity and who's qualified and who's not qualified. Let's talk facts. Let's talk about what America is going to be like that's different. You are going to see 20 states pass laws banning abortion outright, just banning abortion, and because they know that there are now going to be 5 votes on the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade. And abortion will be illegal in a significant part of the United States in 18 months. There is just no doubt about that. And that's why these seats matter so much, because one of my favorite lines about the Supreme Court was by Justice Robert Jackson, who served on the court in the 1940s and 50s. And he said, "We are not final because we are infallible. We are infallible because we are final." Somebody has the last word, and here it's the Supreme Court, and right. Roe v. Wade is doomed. It is gone because Donald Trump won the election, and because he's going to have the chance, and because he's going to have the chance to appoint 2 Supreme Court justices.
And that wasn't on some, that's just some analysis that they're trying to seed the ground and get people ready for what the possibilities are. And I thought that was pretty fascinating. So what are some of the other fears that people are dealing with? Well, if you ask likely voters, you're hearing some pretty interesting things. We've got harassment of presidential aides and people being chased down in the street, people being told they can't be served at restaurants, which in and of itself, the treatment that Sarah Huckabee Sanders and her husband experienced was pretty mild. Now, her family had to endure some actual protesting, which was absolutely unacceptable. But being asked to leave a restaurant is mild in comparison to being chased down the street like Pam Bondi was outside the movie theater, and the kind of horrible behavior we saw from those activists towards Mitch McConnell and his wife when they were leaving that Georgetown University event. So you've got Rasmussen reports polling Americans and finding that 59% of all voters are concerned that those opposed to President Trump's policies will resort to violence. You also have 31% of those same people polled saying that they believe it's likely that the United States will experience a second civil war sometime in the next 5 years. The new polling evidence of fear in the country over political division follows the harassment of 3 top Trump aides. I just mentioned who they were to you. And also Stephen Miller. I'm not sure if you guys know about this story because we didn't discuss it on air, but it was in the news that senior advisor Stephen Miller had protesters outside of his condo. And so this also follows the call by Representative Maxine Waters to bring pressure to Trump officials in public. And legal experts have urged Trump aides to apply for concealed carry permits and buy guns. In its analysis of the new survey, Rasmussen highlighted who is most concerned about the violence. Most voters across the partisan spectrum are concerned about political violence from those who are opposed to Trump's policies. Republicans are the most likely to be very concerned. The level of concern is about the same among Republicans, Democrats, and unaffiliated voters when it comes to the threat of violence from those who are critical of the media's coverage of Trump. So they feel like people who are critical of the media are more likely to be violent. And women and those under 40 are more worried about a possible civil war than men and older voters are. 44% of blacks think a second civil war is likely in the next 5 years. 28% of whites and 36% of other minority voters believe that. Whites are also less concerned about political violence than the others are. So that's an interesting breakdown. I don't know what that says about, you know, the likelihood. I would hope that the likelihood is very slim, but let's just take a look at what people are saying on online social media. It's a good indicator of what's going on. Again, we have to keep it in context. Not everyone in America is on social media. There are plenty of people who go their entire lives or have gone their entire lives thus far without ever sending out a tweet or even reading one. They get their news online, but they don't have Twitter. So it doesn't mean just because we hear, you know, crazy stuff on Twitter that it is indicative of what everyone feels. But it also depends on who the tweets are from. But this is going to kind of shock you. The Washington Post sent out a tweet. Analysis, Democrats' bogus argument about what the GOP said about the Supreme Court nominees in an election year. So they had a post about that. Now, the left on Twitter, led by Ian Millhiser, he's the justice editor of Think Progress. So that's hard left politics right there, you guys. He said expletive Justice Kennedy with periods all in between for emphasis. Paul Begala, a name you've heard before, he is the counselor to former President Clinton. He tweeted out, I don't think any Democrat is going to go along with a Trump appointee to the Supreme Court. Not if he or she wants to raise any money or have any volunteers. Now, if anybody could lessen the amount of money that you raise or prevent you from getting all the volunteers you need, it would be Paul Begala. Curtis Cook of Comedy Central said, I wish this Kennedy had been shot instead of the other ones. How is he still on Twitter? He wished somebody had been shot? And he's from Comedy Central. The Palmer Report, which is a progressive blog, the leader of that blog sent out a tweet. We only have to find a way to stall or block Trump's Supreme Court nominee until the midterms, after which the Dems will control the Senate and officially shut it down. But everything depends on us stalling it. Call, march, take the streets, whatever. Your life now depends on this. That kind of crazy rhetoric is the reason why people go out and do violence to other people. They see that. They're like, my life depends on it. I must act. And then the crazy. Slate, you've heard of it, Slate magazine. Anthony Kennedy just destroyed his legacy as a gay rights hero. Was he trying to be a gay rights hero, or was he interpreting what he felt like was a right based on what he was told in all of the different cases that came before him? I don't agree with what he did, but I don't think he ever set out to be a gay rights hero. Think progress. Here is the nasty, unflinching send-off that Justice Kennedy deserves. And then they have an op-ed that is full of expletives. Jeff Schweitzer, a Clinton administration official, last tweet, sent out this message. Democrats have to do anything and everything to block any action on the Supreme Court until after the midterm elections. If they cave, they'll be fully complicit with McConnell's crimes and no better than the GOP. They have to resist at all costs. Again, language, rhetoric, messaging, all pointing to doomsday scenarios, which motivates people who are mentally ill. Stop engaging in this kind of dangerous, incendiary talk. It's not American. It's not good. And by the way, just in case anyone thinks I'm some kind of a racist for saying it's not American, all the people who did these tweets, they're all white guys, white liberals. So no racism there. I think it's okay for me to say that they're engaging in conversation that's not American. And when I say it's not American, it doesn't mean they're not Americans. It means that the things that they're saying are not the kinds of things that Americans have to worry about, because when we elect people, no one dies. When people lose political office, no one dies. We don't have coups. We don't have violent overthrows. We don't have radical people taking over our government and changing things up. We don't have armored vehicles in the street running down Americans who are protesting. We don't do that because we have a constitution and we live in a functioning society. So calm down. The sky's not falling. The world's not over. If all of us who are pro-life have been living all this time under Roe v. Wade, then y'all can certainly live when it's gone. How about that? So we have, it's just, it's kind of exhausting. You look at it and you think, so people like this, first of all, they spend too much time on Twitter. And my advice to you, as someone who's on Twitter, and I'm always looking for ways to grow my social media, and I want to do a good job on my social media, I have to say to you that it is also okay to unplug from social media and not be on there. If you find yourself, your heart rate goes up and your breathing gets a little bit quicker when you're on Twitter, it might be that you're on there reading the tweets of other people too much. And it's an easy trap to get sucked into. And what I've done recently is I took the same route that I took with Facebook, because I was so upset about their data collection and them trying to mine my privacy, which was only prevented by the fact that I have an iPhone. And I deleted the Facebook app from my phone. So I still go onto Facebook, but I find I'm there much less often. Now, the side impact of that is that I miss some of the announcements. Like a friend of mine who I only know on Facebook, she moved from one state to another, and I totally missed the announcement about that. I just caught it on Instagram, and I was like, oh my goodness, I really need to catch up and maybe just shoot her a quick direct message, to say, oh, I hope everything went well, and, praying for you. But I'm not missing the vitriol, and I haven't been in hardly any of the slap fights that sometimes erupt on my page from posting things. So that's been great. So recently I felt like I needed to delete the Twitter app, and I took my time in doing it. I actually was on Twitter scrolling through, reading all of the tweets in my timeline and seeing how negative they were. And I thought, this is why I need to let this go. So I'm still on Twitter. I sent tweets out today. I will continue to do so. But I have to do it from my desktop, which means when I have my phone, I'm not looking at Twitter constantly, checking it 10, 15 times a day, checking it every hour, seeing how many retweets I have, etc. I still care about it, but it has definitely changed the tenor of my day. So I'm recommending that to other people who, if you're finding that the online social media is getting to be too much for you, you're still going to get your news. You're still going to be able to get the information that you need to operate and everything. You still have Safari. You can still log in through your Safari app or your whatever app you use to access the internet. But if you don't have the app where you can click it and constantly be on there, it really makes a difference in how much time you spend on the app. So, or on Twitter, period. And does that mean I might not have as much engagement? I'm going to weigh the trade-off for now and see how that works out for me. It might be that I actually spend less time holding my phone. And in the big scheme of things, I think that's probably of a great benefit to me, and I can get some other things done instead. we'll see how it cracks out. If I decide to put it back on, I'll definitely share on the show and disclose how I came to that decision. But I'm sharing it with you because I'm hoping that if you're sitting here and you're feeling stressed out about all this stuff, there's an outlet for us. We got to unplug some of this stuff if we want our sanity. We deserve it. Hey, you know? All right, so that's hour one. We'll be back with hour two of Stacey on the Right. You keep it here.
Urban Family Talk.
Being there is half the battle. 1milliondads.com exists to help Christian fathers to be present and intentional in the lives of their children. Our hope is to wake up the fearsome wonder that is the mighty man of God and restore him to his role as leader, teacher, and counselor. Visit 1milliondads.com. 1milliondads.com.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News on the Hour, I'm Chris Woodward. Breaking news out of Annapolis, Maryland, where a sheriff is reporting multiple fatalities are confirmed in a newsroom shooting. A suspect was apprehended after the deadly shooting. It happened this afternoon at the Capital Gazette, which is one of the oldest newspapers in the U.S., and according to Fox News reporter Trace Gallagher, it is owned by the Baltimore Sun.
And it is also a sister paper to the Maryland Gazette. Back in 2006, the paper made headlines because one of the part owners and the editor of the paper actually committed suicide. We're going to gather some more information on what we believe is happening in and outside the building.
Aerial footage shows police officers and emergency personnel walking around, a sign that authorities believe a shooter no longer poses a public threat. More on this story next hour. You can also find information on our website, onenewsnow.com. President Donald Trump was in Wisconsin today, where he spoke about the new manufacturing plant that the Foxconn technology company is building. The president said wages are going up.
After 20 years, wages are rising. Remember, I used to say they did better 20 years ago than they did 2 years ago. Now they're starting to do better, and they're having their choice of jobs where they can enjoy what they're doing.
President Trump also spoke about the nation's low unemployment rate and tax reform. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein was on Capitol Hill today to testify before the House Committee on the Judiciary. The Deputy Attorney General was discussing oversight of the FBI and Department of Justice's actions surrounding the 2016 election. During his time holding the floor, Representative Trey Gowdy passionately asked Rosenstein to wrap up the investigation, saying that the fallout of the probe is not impacting Russia.
There's an old saying that justice delayed is justice denied. I think right now all of us are being denied. Whatever you got, finish it up, because this country is being torn apart.
FBI Director Christopher Wray and Rosenstein answered questions on the findings from a joint investigation into the Clinton email probe. Rosenstein vowed during testimony to ensure that wrongdoers were accountable for their actions and that similar issues would not take place in the future. While many places have considered or actually implemented taxes on soda, California lawmakers are voting on a measure to ban soda taxes. Fox's Jessica Rosenthal has more on why.
The beverage industry is playing hardball, so California lawmakers proposed a bill to ban new soda taxes for the next 12 years. The proposal advanced quickly, passing out of the state Senate Tuesday. They're trying to get the beverage industry to pull a new measure they've successfully backed that would go on the ballot. The measure says a simple majority would no longer be enough in order to pass tax increases. Tax increases would require support from 2/3 of voters or a city council or county supervisors. State lawmakers scrambled, hoping if they approve a plan that will stop new taxes on groceries, including drinks, through the year 2030, that the beverage industry will pull their measure. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
The 4th of July celebration in St. Paul, Minnesota will be a little less bright this year. City Mayor Chris Coleman has canceled the annual fireworks show, citing budget concerns. Local residents from the St. Paul area, like this man who says he understands the financial aspect of the decision, have mixed opinions on the issue, but one thing is common for them all: the lights over the city will be missed.
It's tough. I know that it's a monetary reason, so, appreciate the fiscal conservatism, but at the same time, a little, unpatriotic, it seems, to not have fireworks on the 4th of July.
The event was previously funded by the Taste of Minnesota Festival, but stopped after declaring bankruptcy in 2010. The mayor has not ruled out funding through private donations, but says the city cannot pay the bill. That is American Family News for this hour. For more news and information, visit onenewsnow.com. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and the One News Now mobile app for Apple and Android devices. Thanks for listening.
Coming next week on The Dwelling Place, Pastor Al Pittman continues to walk us through the Bible, line by line and verse by verse, to let God show us just how timeless His truth is. That's next week on The Dwelling Place.
Welcome to Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington.
Peter Strzok, who was the lead investigator for the FBI in both the Clinton investigation and exoneration and the Russia-Trump campaign investigation. He did the interview of Michael Flynn and others. He will appear behind closed doors with the committees on Capitol Hill. But we are told that this may be just a warm-up and that we can potentially expect him to testify publicly in the near future, so we can all watch his answers to these questions as well. A new piece by Real Clear Investigations, very interesting story, quotes a former FBI agent as saying that he sees that there were 7 attempts, really, by U.S. intelligence and Clinton operatives to essentially entrap members of the Trump campaign. This former agent's name is Mark Walk, and he says, quote, what appear to have been repeated attempts to implicate the Trump campaign in some sort of quid pro quo arrangement with the Russians, who claim to have dirt on Hillary, look like efforts to manufacture evidence against members of the Trump campaign or create pretexts to investigate it. Tomorrow's hearing will drill down on that very central question here. And earlier this evening, I spoke with Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee.
Okay, welcome to the show. Stacy Washington, host of Stacy on the Right, here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk, urbanfamilytalk.com. Don't forget to sign up for our conference. We have our Marriage and Family Conference coming up, and we are really putting together a fantastic lineup for you. You're going to love the content that we're going to be bringing. I have been compiling some special treats and things that I'm going to be bringing down with me. I'm going to be there in Tupelo, and I've been putting these things together. It's like I've been getting a lot of inspiration surrounding it, and so please come to the conference. Not only will there be great content there, but you're going to get to meet a ton of the hosts from AFR and Urban Family Talk, and you're going to get to see and hear from us about what we're doing, get some updates, and just a great time of fellowship. And it's a quick conference. Once it's over, you're back to your weekend. We're going to get back to our, different places that we're traveling in from for those of us who aren't local. And you are really going to be pleased with what you see going on there. So you go to urbanfamilytalk.com, click the link, and register. And then we'll see you in August 17th and 18th. So right now, let's talk about who's coming on. We have Pastor John Hagee of Cornerstone Church coming on next segment. And you just heard from the obviously Fox News clip there talking about so much of what's going on and how unprecedented it is. And there seems to be almost like everybody's in a stupor. Like people are unable to kind of, I don't know. People seem as if there's this like bad stuff has been going on, yet it's not that bad. Horrible things have been going on in our government, and people seem to just be like fine and okay with it. Anyway, I want to listen to Lindsey Graham. I mean, come on. He's not my favorite guy. Lindsey Graham has been talking about this, and he came on with Martha McCallum, who you just heard there, and they were talking about this kind of unprecedented action that was taken by the FBI. And the more we learn, the more we know it was just dirty dealings. It's number 8.
Well, what we know now is that the person in charge of the Clinton email investigation, Mr. Strzok and Ms. Page, were in the tank for Clinton and hated Trump. Now, did those two people start an investigation against the Trump campaign because they had a political bias, or was it based on legitimate evidence? How would you like this guy supervising a confidential informant against the Trump campaign, given his bias and given his dislike for President Trump? He should be the last guy to go to court to get a warrant on anybody associated with the Trump campaign. My question is, what role did they play in the Russian investigation?
You know, and it follows up on their text messages, which, you know, I would imagine he's going to say, look, those were just, you know, I was being funny. I was just kidding around. No, I didn't like the president, but it had no bearing whatsoever on my actions. But they, talk about the insurance policy, and they talk about stopping him. And then, late spring of 2016, all these efforts to try to sort of poke for soft places within members of the campaigns and see if they pick up on this stuff begin, it appears.
Well, here's what's important. July the 31st, they clear Clinton. Now, let me tell you this. If you had done what she had done with her email systems and compromised classified information, you would not have been cleared. So they could not stop Trump if they found her guilty of abusing classified information. So there was no way they were ever going to find Clinton liable if the goal was to stop Trump, because you're giving him the election. Yeah. The question now is about the Russian investigation. Was it a counterintelligence investigation where they were worried about Russia trying to penetrate the Trump campaign? If that's the reason they investigated the Trump campaign, they should have told the Trump campaign, hey, there's some people associated with Russia that you need to be aware of. The fact that they never told the Trump campaign about the investigation is very curious to me.
It's curious to all of us. Well, to anybody who's paying attention and to anybody who really feels like we've got a this was a problem. So I'm not okay with what's happened. I don't think a lot of Americans are, but we're not seeing the kind of outrage we would see if the media were also outraged. If they were outraged, then there would be more outrage out in the public, because people would say, well, my favorite host on CNN is outraged about this. It must be something to be outraged about. Unfortunately, we don't have the media on the side of having our government behave in a nonpartisan manner. So I want to go now to some breaking news that I'm noticing that we've got going on. Multiple people have been shot at the Capital Gazette newspaper in Annapolis. A shooting has occurred at the Capital Gazette in Anne Arundel County, a paper that is owned by the Baltimore Sun. Anne Arundel County Police confirmed there was an active shooter at 888 Bestgate Road, where the newspaper's offices are located. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms they've confirmed they're responding to a shooting incident at the Gazette. Phil Davis is a Gazette crime reporter who was there at the time of the shooting. He said that multiple people have been shot. Gunmen shot through the glass door to the office, opened fire on multiple employees. Can't say more. Don't want to declare anyone dead, but it's bad. And he was interviewed by police. There's nothing more terrifying than hearing multiple people get shot while you're under your desk and then hear the gunman reload. The building was evacuated as officers continued to search it. And Governor Larry Hogan offered on Twitter his condolences, saying that he's absolutely devastated to learn of this tragedy in Annapolis. So they want people to stay away from the area, and the story will be updated. And I'm looking at this over on one of the other websites there. Here we are. One person is in custody, and it sounds as if a shotgun was used. Wow. CBS Baltimore is reporting as well. 4 deaths reported after a shooting at Capitol Gazette building in Annapolis. Oh, wow. So first shots were reported at 2:40 p.m. after the shooter entered the building. There may be one person in custody, but they don't know if there are any others who were actually assisting with the shooting. And they were shooting while the shooting was going on. People were live tweeting. Anthony Messenger tweeted out, "Active shooter, 888 Bestgate, please help us." Phil Davis tweeted out, "Gunman shot through the glass door to the office, open fire on multiple employees." And yeah, so it's breaking news. They have a crew on the scene. And the White House spokeswoman, Lindsay Walters, says President Trump has been briefed on the shooting, and our thoughts and prayers are with all of those who are affected. So as the program progresses, if I see any other breaking news on this story, I'll definitely bring that to you post-haste. Wow, so we have to wonder if the person who's been apprehended, wow, has that person been identified as someone who worked there? Was it an outside shooter? How did this happen? We have so many questions. U.S. News is also reporting the same thing. And okay. Also, if you're going to run around and say horrible things about gunning down journalists, then you know I'm not on your side. So as much as I don't like the coverage that the media provides the president and anyone who's a conservative, again, the rhetoric matters. The language that we use matters. The person who's responsible for the shooting is, that person is the shooter. They're responsible. However many people there were that did the shooting, they're responsible. But we are responsible for our language and how we incite, encourage, what have you, people to take actions because their lives are in danger, or the republic depends on it, or everything's going to burn down, or America as we know it will be over. Let's stop that. Let's stop talking like that. So 20 people have been injured and 4 people shot by a mass shooter, and people are complaining that Sarah Sanders has a little bit of extra security because of the way she's been treated. This is the kind of petty stuff that gets us nowhere. And you know, it does. Again, I just caution those of us who are Christians about what we're doing when we're getting on Twitter. It's almost like an infection when you get on there and everybody gets so angry, and you can feel your blood pressure start ratcheting up, and then everybody starts tweeting things, and then there's these horrible, horrible tweets that we don't even barely recognize ourselves. And a lot of people go there as an outlet because they have horrible things going on in their lives. But God is here for us to pray, and He's here for us to cast our burdens at His feet. He's here to carry our burdens so that we don't have to resort to going on Twitter and tweeting like this. So let's remember that. So I want to talk about these 17 states who are suing the Trump administration. And yes, I'm going back to news, you guys. This show is not going to be taken over by speculation about who this shooter was or what he did. The news has been broken. I've shared it with you. Moving on to the next portion. So we've got 17 states suing the Trump administration. Another day, another lawsuit. This is a lawsuit that's being brought by 17 states, including Washington, New York, California. So left-leaning states. All of the states have Democrats who are their attorney generals. And they're filing a lawsuit in Washington, D.C., in U.S. District Court. Actually, Washington, D.C. attorneys general have joined the other states, and they're actually filing the lawsuit in U.S. District Court in Seattle. If that's not forum shopping, I've never heard it before. The administration's practice of separating families is cruel, plain and simple. And this is according to New Jersey Attorney General Gerber Gruel in an emailed statement. Every day it seems like the administration is issuing new contradictory policies and relying on new contradictory justifications, but we can't forget the lives of real people hang in the balance. And so they claim that this lawsuit is meant to stop this from happening. But their lawsuit cannot override the court order from 1997, the Flores decision. That's why the president asked in his court order for Congress and the Department of Justice to seek remedy from the Flores decision, because that's the reason the kids are being separated. You know, rational, clear-thinking people can understand that if it's a court decision that's making the government do something, you need a judge to vacate that court decision, or you need a new court decision, basically a new lawsuit, to wind its way through the courts to make a determination. So here's a little caveat to this story, and it's the reason why I wanted to share it with you. So there's a Trump v. Hawaii, which was a Supreme Court decision that just came down. Justice Thomas actually concurred, throwing cold water on the growing practice of district courts imposing nationwide injunctions. Justice Thomas wrote in his opinion that if their popularity continues, this court must address their legality, meaning that district courts from certain segments of the United States, like Seattle or the Ninth Circuit, those courts cannot issue nationwide injunctions that tie the hands of the President of the United States. They can issue injunctions to individuals, but not to the executive branch. If they continue to do that, that's exactly what they're looking to do. They want to issue an injunction to prevent the president from separating families and from detaining them, which means catch and release. If they do it, the Supreme Court's going to have to take the matter up. Sounds like that's what we need, because, hard-headed people are going to hard-head. That's what they're going to do. All right. That's the music. When we get back, we're going to have Pastor John Hagee of Cornerstone Church. He's going to be with us. Thanks for being here. Stay right there.
Hi, I'm Will Addison.
And I'm Miki.
From Airing the Addisons on Urban Family Talk.
We'd like to invite you to the Marriage, Family, and Life Conference coming up August 17th and 18th.
The list of speakers is amazing. We have Ryan Baumberger of the Radiance Foundation, Dr. Clarence Schuler of Building Lasting Relationships, Abraham Hamilton III, Pastor Bert Harper and his wife Jan, Stacy Washington, Lonnie Poindexter, Pastor Dexter Sanders, and we'll be there too.
There's a direct attack by the enemy on marriage and family, and babies in the womb are treated like political footballs instead of life. We want to encourage and equip the body of Christ to fight for the restoration of the family. If we can get our families on track, a lot of society's problems could be solved. The Marriage, Family, and Life Conference is from Urban Family Communications, a division of the American Family Association. You can learn more and register at urbanfamilytalk.com.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
If you do an online search of the term cultural Marxism, you will see a Wikipedia entry that dismisses it as a conspiracy theory that is supposedly trying to take over Western culture. Actually, it is the dominant form of Marxism in America and in much of the West today. Dr. Paul Kenger was on Point of View Radio Talk Show with me to talk about his recent article about cultural Marxism. He explained that cultural Marxism began about a century ago in Germany because the proponents felt that orthodox Marxism was too limiting and too narrow. They wanted revolutionary changes in marriage, sexuality, and family. They looked to the universities as a place where their ideas could be launched. They could organize the students, the artists, and the media to transform Western society. Instead of focusing on an economic war, they wanted to bring a cultural war. One of the key figures in cultural Marxism was Antonio Gramsci, who taught that we should seize the cultural means of production. That would be the media and the universities. He believed that the social transformation would be able to march through the institutions. One place where cultural Marxism is evident today is in what is called cultural theory. Paul Kenger reminded us that Barack Obama's alma mater, Occidental College, has a Department of Critical Theory and Social Justice. It promises to instruct students in the principles of Marxism, psychoanalysis, the Frankfurt School, deconstructionism, critical race studies, queer theory, feminist theory, and post-colonial theory. If you've been near a college campus lately, this should all sound very familiar. This is not a conspiracy theory, but an accurate picture of the march of cultural Marxism through the institutions. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kirby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. Thanks for being here today. At Stacy on the Right on Twitter and Instagram, and StacyOnTheRight.com. Those are the places where you can connect up and get the newsletter and subscribe and hit the like button. Thank you so much for being here today. God bless, and we'll keep you updated on the news of the shooting in Annapolis as things develop. But right now, I would ask you to just continually pray and get that going. Pray for the victims, the victims' families. And that everybody who has anything to do with this would be apprehended and brought to justice. Right now, it's my pleasure to welcome Pastor John Hagee of Cornerstone Church, CEO of John Hagee Ministries, chairman of Christians United for Israel. Pastor Hagee, thank you for coming on today.
Stacy, it's a pleasure to hear from you.
You know, I'm glad to speak to you because this is a wonderful event that you're talking about here, the Washington, D.C. Summit. Tell us all about it.
The Washington, D.C. Summit started in 2006. In 2006, I formed an organization called Christians United for Israel because at that point in time, we were hearing the voices out of the Middle East, specifically Iran, screaming death to Israel and death to the Jews. And history teaches us that anytime someone starts talking about killing the Jews, like Hitler, you need to pay attention. So I gathered 400 of America's finest evangelical pastors and told them we needed to start a national organization that would have the ability to put together a national grassroots organization that would stand up and defend Israel and the Jewish people. That has been done, and each year we have met in Washington, D.C., and on our first night, Monday night, we have a night to honor Israel that features exciting speakers. This year is going to be Nikki Haley. We're also going to have senators who will be there. Laura Ingraham is going to be there. The next day, we go and meet every senator and every member of Congress, and they get the opportunity to face the citizens of the United States that live in their district and let them hear the things that we are concerned about concerning the nation of Israel. Right now, Christians United for Israel has 4.1 million active members in the United States of America, and what began as an idea in 2006 is a reality in 2018.
Wow. So I'm on the website here, and I want to give people an opportunity to go there as well. It's cufi.org, CUFI.org, Christians United for Israel. You named off some really heavy hitters there, Laura Ingraham and our Secretary to the UN, Nikki Haley, who is an outstanding speaker and an outstanding advocate on behalf of the United States for Israel at the UN. She has really been a leader there, and it's been so wonderful to see what she's been able to accomplish thus far. So it's standing to support Israel, and the conference is July 23rd through 24th, 2018. And it looks like it's going to be a really good time. What are some of the things that people will, like panels or things that they'll get to engage in besides the wonderful speakers?
The things that we want to place in the minds of the people is the importance of the people who are attending to stand up and be supportive of the nation of Israel. We also want to go out of our way to express our profound appreciation to President Trump for his willingness to recognize the city of Jerusalem. Obviously, it had been the capital of Israel for 3,000 years, but some members of the UN still hadn't gotten the message, so that Jerusalem was, in fact, the capital of Israel. And then he moved the embassy and had a dedication for that embassy, which I was privileged to participate in. And then he yanked the wheels off of the Iranian nuclear deal, which was really a master stroke in bringing peace to the Middle East and the security of America, because when Barack Obama gave them $150 billion, he gave them enough money to build a nuclear weapon that would take Israel out. They were talking about Israel being a one-bomb state, and they would have used that nuclear power to threaten future presidents of the United States. But thanks to President Trump, that's gone. That's over. We have a partner for peace in Israel. The world knows it. Our embassy is there. Israel and America are hooked at the hip. We are partners for peace, and the tyrants of the world are in a state of shock. Nikki Haley has played a great role in that, by the way, in the United Nations.
Wow. So this is just kind of that time in history where this is going to be probably one of the best conferences you guys have ever had.
I will tell you, this is going to be a jubilee session. This is our 12th year, and the number 12 in Hebrew is a very strong number. It's the 12 is the number of authority in the kingdom of God, and we are, as Christians, delighted to go to Washington with a divine authority to stand up for Israel, to defend Israel, to stand against anti-Semitism in every form, which is sweeping this country in America's colleges and universities. It's time for people who have any kind of biblical foundation and any appreciation at all for the contribution the Jewish people have made to Christianity to come to Washington July the 22nd and the 23rd, Monday and Tuesday, and become a part of this great crowd of people expressing their support for the state of Israel.
Perfect. Well, Pastor Hagee, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to join us and tell us about this. The website's cufi.org, cufi.org, and that's where you can register for the conference. Sounds like a really good time is going to be had by all for people who want to register and go hear that fantastic lineup of speakers and get to kind of network and spend time with people who really support Israel and our alliance with them as the United States. Thank you, Pastor, for joining in today.
Stacey, if I could say one thing.
Sure.
Those of you who live within driving distance of Washington, D.C., and just want to go hear Nikki Haley, you can drive and go, and for a $10 contribution, join a crowd of thousands that will be there. We would love to have you at the Washington, D.C. Conference Center. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Pastor Hagee. Great to speak to you today.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I think that sounds like a lot of fun. And, you know, sometimes we can get a little overwhelmed with all the conferences and things that are going on. And you just have to be wise and, you know, make your choices about which ones you're going to attend. This one sounds like a really great time. It's roughly 3 weeks away, so still time to go if you really feel like, you know, if you really feel like you can make it. And it sounds like, you know, to those two speakers alone, I know he listed off a few, but Nikki Haley and Laura Ingraham, that's pretty good stuff right there. So I want to also circle back around to the breaking news story that we're covering right now here on the show. We're kind of dipping in and out, and that is the shooting in Annapolis. So apparently, Milo Yiannopoulos, and this is according to a number of stories that are here, breaking news kind of people are reporting this alongside the story about the shooting, that Milo Yiannopoulos had a moment on I guess he has a podcast or a radio program where he said it's time to start shooting up newsrooms. And then today, you know, that's what's happening. I don't want people to assign blame or to act as if this is something that has happened because of President Trump's kind of back and forth with the media. He's never said that they should be harmed, and I think the speculation is just a bit much. There are people who go online and on social media and say these things. You know, they're now reporting it over at Raw Story about Milo Yiannopoulos. So one law enforcement source has told CBS News the suspect is a white male in his 20s. He did not have identification on him, and that he used a shotgun. And that's as far as I'm going to go in identifying the person. I'm not going to use his name on the air, and I'm not going to do a big expose on his past history or, how he grew up and what kind of car he drove and all that kind of stuff. We've got to stop glorifying these monsters who go around shooting up places when they're angry. And so one suspect in custody as of right now. That's all we know. For people to be giving, blaming it on this person and that takes away the responsibility of the person who actually took the time to organize themselves to pull off this heinous activity. And I don't know what's going on at the Gazette. I don't know very much about the reporting that they do there. I have no idea if I've ever had any interaction with them in the thousands of interviews that I've done. So, full disclosure, I have no idea. As this story is breaking, we'll bring you more. And I just want people we should, as Christians, commit to praying about this, praying for the people who have been injured, praying for the first responders and everyone who has anything to do with it. And then as we learn more, we'll know more. And that's it. That's all we've got. So if you're wondering what the First Lady is doing, she's actually had a short notice engagement. She flew out this morning, and she is engaged in a roundtable discussion with federal officials and a rancher at the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol Tucson Station. The participants in the roundtable are First Lady Melania Trump, Kevin McAleenan, who's the Commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Protection, Randolpho Karish, who's a Chief Patrol Agent, Riley Leonard, Division Chief, Michael Humphreys, Assistant Director to Field Operations Director, Joyce Silva, Border Patrol Agent, Jesse Williams, Deputy Field Operations Director, David Gonzalez, who's a U.S. Marshal, Jerry Fairweather, Chief Deputy U.S. Marshal, and Mr. Dan Bell, who's a local rancher. The First Lady was welcomed in by Mr. McLellan, and he said that 1,600 people, including 539 in families, tried to enter the United States illegally just yesterday. So she's not just going around doing photo ops and glad handing with the children. She is meeting with the children at each of these locations that she's been showing up to. But she's also speaking to the Border Patrol agents, and she's putting an opportunity in front of these people to speak to her about what they're going through and what their jobs entail and what it's like to do the work that they do. And, just like we don't give enough credit to the people who pick up our trash and the people who, lay sewer mains and the guys who, not just create the plans for, but actually build dams and things, water control systems. They're like unsung heroes. They go around in the background. In fact, Mike Rowe does a television show that's now on TBN, I believe, on the weekend after the Mike Huckabee program. And he does dirty jobs, but he also interviews these amazing people who do, this is the unsung hero type work. We talk a lot about how teachers are unsung heroes and things like that, and they do amazing work. But I'm talking about the kind of stuff that you wouldn't dream of ever attempting to do, that these types of people do, and Border Patrol agents are among that group. Not only do we not sing their praises or give them any credit for what they do, but we never consider the emotional toll it takes on them to have to deal in. Basically, it's the control of human beings who all they have on their mind is getting into the country, and the Border Patrol agents, all they have on their mind is controlling the flow of people into the country illegally. And we make that job so much harder for them because we do not have a physical barrier to prevent people from coming in. Just the existence of a physical barrier at our border would reduce the number of people who attempt to cross illegally. Also, proper enforcement would reduce it. Immediate turnarounds, actual courts on the border where people would be heard and immediately turned around. But we don't have that. And we have a party in this country right now that's advocating so strongly for the lawlessness that this is where we are. So you have the president's wife down there. She asks how often he sees children crossing alone and at what age. He showed her a photo of a 6-year-old boy crossing the desert with a Coke bottle and a note. He said people have to also understand the danger of the desert, of the heat. Gonzalez explained that the Marshals Service mission at the border processing pretrial prisoners charged with border crossing offenses. He said most plead guilty and are sentenced to time served, although repeat offenders can get as much as 90 days. And Bell, who is the rancher at the roundtable, said he's a 4th-generation rancher in a family that has been ranching along the border since 1938. He advocated for stronger enforcement, more access to the border for ranchers, and for the port at Nogales to remain open. Silva said she's been a Border Patrol agent for more than 20 years. She's originally from New York City. She says, I love my job. As a mother, it hurts to see the children. They don't know what's going on. She says her job is to get them to safety and give them food, water, and toys if they still want them. She's also given children her lunch while she's in the field. After they get done with this round table, First Lady Melania Trump will move to a tour of the detention facility, and the press corps will report from there. I think, depends on what time that report comes in during the show. If we have time, we'll get to it, but possibly not. Right now, we know we're going to be going out here in just a second to the break. And when we come back, I have that audio for you of Chris Matthews losing it. This is the time for your popcorn, your snacks. Maybe you have been saving a piece of cake or a little thing of yogurt that's vanilla flavored for the afternoon for your snack. Or maybe you're just going to munch on an apple. Now's your time. You go get those snacks and treats and be ready, because unhinged Chris Matthews is up next on Stacey on the Right. I also want to encourage you guys to head out and get the book, Growing in Prayer, which I often talk about on the show. And I'm actually compiling a few extra copies because I wanted to do some giveaways here on the show to kind of spur people on, because I know what it's like. I'll be in my car sometimes running around doing stuff, and I'll be listening to a show or news and information program, and someone will interview someone and they'll talk about their book. And while I'm listening, I'm like, oh man, that sounds good. I should add that to my list. And then I arrive at my destination, turn my car off, and go inside. And I don't think about it again until someone says, I just read so-and-so, or so-and-so is just on. I'm like, wait, did I say I wanted it? And by then it's so far gone, it's like never getting it back. So I had the idea, get a few extra copies, give a few copies away on the show. I've had people reach out about that book more than any other book I've ever talked about on this program. So we're going to be doing that in the month of August. It's going to be super fun. So I'm getting my stuff together for that, and I'm excited to be able to do that here on the show. When we get back, we'll have more for you. Stay right there.
This is Uncommon Moments. Here's former Super Bowl winning NFL coach Tony Dungy and his wife Lauren sharing from their book Uncommon Marriage.
Tony and I look forward to Tuesdays because it's a time we can give back to our community.
And it's also become a date day for us. We see our older kids off to school and get a babysitter to watch the youngest ones. Then Lauren and I visit 2 Tampa schools where we read to students. Afterwards, we have lunch together.
Tuesdays is just another way that Tony and I make sure we're scheduling time for the two of us. Yes, we're both busy, but isn't everyone? So when it comes to your uncommon marriage, TIME is the key word. Spend time with each other, and you'll see your marriage grow.
Tony and Lauren Dungy, authors of Uncommon Marriage, learning about lasting love and overcoming life's obstacles together. Discover more at CoachDungy.com.
We need you to call your senators today. Tell them to put an end to the liberals' filibuster, switch to a majority vote, and defund Planned Parenthood. Your call will make a difference. Call the Capitol switchboard at 202-224-3121 or go to afaaction.net. Again, call 202-224-3121 and tell your senators to switch to a majority vote and defund Planned Parenthood.
I'm Will Addison, Director of Urban Family Talk. We desire to be a movement of time tellers. In 1 Chronicles 12:32 it says, the sons of Issachar were men who had understanding of the time, to know what Israel ought to do. In these perilous times, God is raising up a people of discernment who will see, pray, and act. We sound the alarm as watchmen. We cry aloud that God's people may be activated for his service. Join the movement at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Hi, this is Steve Tiber with 8 Days of Hope. We've been all over the country helping disaster victims who lose everything.
It's truly a blessing. I really don't have the words to express.
And yet they see a glimmer of hope when a volunteer shows up.
Building the home, that's the second reason we're here. The number one reason is to share the gospel and give them hope.
It's everything that's right in America. I mean, it really represents the best that we have to offer.
That's one of the main reasons for doing it, is being able to be the hands and feet of Jesus and coming out and working with so many wonderful volunteers.
I just feel like it's important in this day and age to teach a child how to serve.
Please go to our website, 8daysofhope.com, and click on Get Involved, submit your email address, and the next time we go anywhere with a disaster, we'll invite you to come along as well.
I love coming in the job room because you can see these pieces of paper. They aren't just a piece of paper. Right. It's a family that's hurting, and it's a gospel opportunity.
I just thank God, for this moment. I mean, I'll be back in my home, and I know it's going to be awesome.
Come love others with 8 Days of Hope.
This is Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
Let me bring in Chris Matthews on the politics of this and that confirmation battle that now looms. And Chris, you've been all over our airwaves the last few hours calling on Democrats to fight this. Let me ask you, from a political standpoint, if you're Democrats sitting there with 49 votes in the Senate and you need to bring over at least one, probably a couple of Republicans to have a chance of knocking this off, what is the best argument or the best tactic that Democrats would have to pick off those Republicans?
How about survival of the Democratic leadership? In 2016, look what happened. Hillary Clinton, the establishment candidate, won. How did she win? The party helped her. They had debates during NFL games, any way to protect her from a serious onslaught from Bernie Sanders. Then they go ahead, they lose. They never even got a vote on Merrick Garland for the Supreme Court. And now we're talking about having a vote in the next 4 or 5 months, right before a midterm election, on this, whoever Trump cooks up. I don't think the party leadership can survive this. How do you explain that you couldn't stop it when you have 49 senators? They just had 50. Just a few years ago, look at the way the Republicans have played the rules. First of all, they said it took 60 senators to approve a Supreme Court justice back 2 years ago. It also, that's 60 years. Then they got rid of that from the nuclear option. And they said also, we're not going to elect anybody or nominate or confirm anybody in the year before a presidential election. So they denied confirmation or even hearings or even meetings with Merrick Garland, the Democratic nominee of President Obama. And so they're playing all these games. It's 60 votes now. It's 50. Oh, by the way, we're not even going to have a vote on it.
So he's spitting a little bit and he's really losing his stuffing. Welcome back to the show. Last segment of the hour. If you want to call in and talk about any of this stuff, welcome your calls. 866-963-2037. Thank you for being here. Thanks for your calls and encouragement. He sounds so unhinged and he's so upset. And I get it. I mean, we've talked about a lot, like the list that I gave you a little bit ago during the program is the reason he's so upset. And obviously, if the shoe was on the other foot, I would be pretty apoplectic as well. It's natural to react negatively when the news is bad. But it's just interesting to hear him because do you guys remember, wasn't he quite smug when he thought Hillary Clinton was about to be the president of the United States? He used to say things about her on the air. You're kind of like, she's not won yet, dude. And he's like, because when Hillary is president, he just had this sense of resignation about it that was so palpable. And now he's really upset. Like, he's totally upset. And I got to say, I know this is real talk, but are Democrats upset about the possibility of the overturning of Roe v. Wade because lots of poor people would not have the option to have taxpayer-funded abortions through Medicaid and they would have more children? Or is it because they would lose the control and messaging over so many women and that America might become more family-oriented? There's new information out that is so ridiculously negative about the birth rate here in this country, about the number of Americans who, the number of cities and counties and states in which more people are dying than are born, new kids are born. We've got to do something. We can't just import our birth rate problem away. We can't just import people super fast to make up for the fact that Americans aren't having enough children. To overturn Roe v. Wade and to get people back into, basically, you have to control yourself. If you don't want to have kids, then you would need to abstain from sexual activity or get married. Yeah. Or bring the baby to term and give the baby up for adoption, which so many families out there, that's why they adopt abroad, because they can't adopt a baby here in this country. There are only children available. And, that's a whole nother conversation. But for families who are looking for a baby, they have to go outside of this country. People are having too many abortions. Women are having too many abortions. And any abortion is wrong. It's all wrong. But you understand what I'm saying? When we have more people who are dying out in a county than babies who are being born, it means our population is on the decline. That's a terrible development. The Bible says the fruit of the womb is your reward. And we know it's true. If you're a parent, you know that's true. If you're a grandparent, you doubly know it's true, because the only way you get to be a grandparent is if you have some kids in the first place. And then you have to raise those kids to want to have kids themselves. What's so sad is when you meet, a person who's in their 60s and they tell you that, oh yeah, we have kids, but our kids are not interested in a family. They vacation, they have very nice lives, and they're not interested in having a family. And then what ends up happening is when that couple does decide that they want to have a family, that the ovaries have gotten old, the motility is not where it needs to be. They're having trouble conceiving because they've gotten past the prime age to have kids, which is in your 20s. And so then you have these grandparents who they thought all along their kids would want to have kids, but it's a culture that you're passing on to your family. And so this idea that kids are expensive, kids are a burden, there's just too much, no, they're not. They're not a burden. Kids don't require an upper class upbringing. Kids don't require the $500 birthday parties when they're 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. They never actually require that. Kids don't demand that they're the only child, so they don't have any siblings, so they can have all of the money and all of the attention of their parents. Kids just want parents who love them and, safety and warm roof over the head and something to eat. They're not really picky. They can get picky. You can raise them picky, but they're not that way coming out of the gate. And the other thing I've noticed, because you guys know, I've admitted to you that, we don't have Netflix anymore, but up until just recently, we're a Netflix family or an Amazon Prime family, meaning we don't watch a lot of live television. And so recently, there's just been a couple of times where we've spent a couple of hours in front of the television watching some live TV. And I've noticed that what used to be the norm was lots of commercials about Pampers and babies and formula and baby clothes and baby shoes and all the stuff that babies need. All their, babies come with all this equipment. You hardly ever see those commercials anymore. Now, I don't watch live TV during the day. Maybe they only have those on during the day. But on the big 3 networks, the number of commercials that have babies in them, because it makes your ovaries hurt. That's the joke with us women, is when you see juicy fat babies on the commercial, you're like, oh, I want one of those. If you don't have women sitting at home or sitting in front of the television in the evening looking at the juicy baby thighs and, the Pamper commercial, if you don't have anybody putting those babies out there for people to look at, if you don't have a culture in which babies are prized and seen as something that is, that's a goal, I want babies, then you're not going to have as many people engage in that. Now, all the young people I know who are in their early 30s, late 20s, all of the ones that I know that I have, online relationships with or friends with, they're all in baby fever. They're having babies. They're putting together these adorable little announcements where the siblings hold up a sign that says baby number 2 is on the way, baby number 3 is on the way. But they tend to be Christian families who are doing that. It's not good for us as a nation to deprioritize families and to make not having babies and having control of your weekends and having, Sunday mornings with the paper and coffee and your dog to yourself, Sunday mornings at the dog park. Nothing about that sounds awesome to me. If you are not almost sweating in the morning on Sunday mornings, gathering together all the kids and their diaper bag and making sure you have your Bible and all your attendant, it's like you're moving into the church. You have so many bags. If you're not doing that, if you're not, cramming a bowl of grits in front of 2 kids and telling the other kid, make yourself some toast, and everybody's eating and then rushing out the door to get to church on Sundays, you just aren't living. You got to be doing that, especially when the kids are small, because that's the routine that you set. And then when you get into the teenage years, you don't have teenagers who are looking at you crazy when you say, hey, it's time to get up and go to church. They're not going to do that because they already know Sundays we go to church. They'll be the ones getting you up. What are you doing? Are you sleeping in, Mom? It's time to get ready for church. They'll do it. And then you won't be sweating anymore. Then you'll be cool, calm, and collected, strolling down to the minivan to get in with the kids, and they'll have already dressed themselves and eaten their own breakfast, and y'all will get in there, and you'll have your coffee cup, and you head on over to the church for Sunday mornings. You got to be doing that. And message for anyone who's in the audience who hears me talking about that, and maybe you've been hurt in church, or you've had negative experience at a church, and you feel like, I don't need to go there anymore. Give it another try. There's another church out there with people in there who are desperate to have you become a part of their membership and be a part of what they're doing. And they're waiting for you. They're waiting for you. God's waiting for you there. Get over there. Get into a church home where you have a community where you can plug in. And but I just encourage parents, if you have kids at home, talk to them about why you loved having them and what they bring to your life and how fulfilling it is, and how much more worthy it is to have a family than it is to simply satisfy your own desires of sleeping in late on the weekend and never having anyone that you have to take care of. And point out to them the loneliness of adults who they only had one child, and that child isn't interested in spending time with them in their elderly years. Or they didn't have any children, so they don't have anyone to take care of them in their elderly years. People who have large families have people to rally around them when their health starts to fail. They have more than one child to choose from to go live with instead of automatically going into a home or an assisted living facility. If you have a family, you have that built-in system. It's a support system that God wants us to have. That's why do you think he made the family? He knew we needed people. We need each other. And I think it's kind of crazy that I have to say that, but that's the culture we're living in, the culture that devalues families and interaction between people, the culture that says to us, it's much better to have all of your extra money to go on trips. You could go to New Zealand and walk the same ground as the characters from the Lord of the Rings, and you could go to Egypt, and you could go to Dubai, and you could stay on a man-made island. You could fly around the world, and you could take cruises, and you could see the glaciers, and you could experience all of that with a wine glass in your hand or a champagne flute in your hand. And you and your husband or you and your wife can be there spending time together and enjoying yourselves and the fruit of your labor. And you don't have to worry about kids crying and kids getting sick and kids having 10 colds a year and what kind of school are they going to go to and all this garbage. And what I'm saying to you is, it sounds wonderful, but those are the same people you see later in life when your kids are graduating from high school and you're, inviting people to come, and they're the ones who they're loving being invited to your activities because they don't have any, because holding that champagne flute gets old when you don't have anything to hold it up to celebrate except, another promotion. It is an innate desire for women, for most women, to want to have a family, but our culture is suppressing that, and we have to fight back against it. Sure, having a family is a risk because that means you have people that you care about desperately that you are worried they might not, like, what if something happens? What if something happens? But instead of saying, what if something happens, grab your scripture and confess to the Lord. That's what I was going to, so this is for tomorrow. I found, I donated a piece of furniture, and it was in our bedroom, and I had the contents of my nightstand drawer from our last house. I just threw it in that drawer, and I forgot it was in there. I pulled the drawer out to empty it out, and I started going through it, and I found a little prayer pamphlet from 10, maybe 15 years ago. It has to be 15 years because the oldest one is 18. It may be even more than that. And it has prayers for moms in it. And every day you read a confession, and then it has it's like a prayer confession, and then it has scriptures at the end. And oh my goodness, as soon as I saw it and I sat down and read for the first page, all the memories came rushing back about all the, you have all these fears, and what if the baby gets sick, and what if this happens, what if that happens. And so this confessional book is meant to calm the fears of moms, and you pray and you confess these things over your family. And it is an amazing resource. I can't believe I haven't seen it in 4 years since we moved here, because we've been living in this house for 4 years, and it was in my nightstand. It was something that I used regularly. So I want to give you guys these confessions. Confess the truth of who you are before God as we're going out of the show today. And then my promise, I'm going to have that. I'm going to show you guys what it looks like. I'm not sure if it's out of print or what, but I'm looking for some extra copies to put with that Growing in Prayer book that we're going to give away next month, because I feel like it's a resource I want to gift to somebody else because it blessed me so much as a young mom. So here are the confessions of the truth who you are before God, and these are all scriptures that you can find in your Bible or online. If you have a phone, pick your phone up, Google the scripture, you can hit print, you can do whatever you want. You have an entire encyclopedia of the universe right here in your hand if you have a phone. No excuses. It says, I have received the abundance of grace and the gift of righteousness. I reign in life through Jesus Christ. Romans 5:17. I am a new creation. Old things have passed away. Everything about me is new. 2 Corinthians 5:17. Who then can be saved? Jesus looked at them and said, with man, this is impossible, but not with God. All things are possible with God. Mark 10:26 and 27. Without me, you can do nothing. John 15:5. He made him who knew no sin to be sin for us, that we might become the righteousness of God in Christ Jesus. 2 Corinthians 5:21. He is the Holy Spirit who leads into all truth. The world cannot receive him because it isn't looking for him and doesn't recognize him. But you know him because he lives with you now and later will be in you. John 14:17. And the last one, God has chosen to make known among the Gentiles the glorious riches of this mystery, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory. Colossians 1:27. Be blessed this evening. Confess God's word over your life. And I'll be back with you tomorrow.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do